Yeah. I actually quite like this, is, and we'll talk about this a bit more about, I guess, what we see our future to be often, this linear line of just going along this, it's another year and it's another year in business and it's another thing like this. But, God can take us to a completely different place, and that's that exponential growth surprise factor. Or it could also be named missed opportunity, Hey, but firstly, I'm a member of Entrepreneurs Organisation. Has anyone heard of EO? No. It's a global membership of about 14,000 entrepreneurs, and I've been a member about coming up 14 years. And they do these universities around the world, like a 4-day deep intensive, and they have the top speakers that fly in, and big days and big nights, and so in 2016 they had one in London which I went to, and it was and it's called Shaken Not Stirred, and again, hopefully today you're going to take some little gems of information. Now that's what I say, there's just sometimes a few little gems, some of the stuff you're going to know that we talk about today, but hopefully there's some gems you take away, because when I went to this university there's some gems I took away. And those gems have been really instrumental in changing our business, And so what I picked up over there is how we look for the mess, the opportunities in the mess. Now what does that mean, right? Or what's the problem we're actually trying to solve? It's like even if you're in sales and you walk to a customer, you don't just pitch what you've got and say, actually, what's the problem? You've actually got customer, because I can actually shape the solution to fix your problem then, And most salespeople don't even do that, But looking for the mess. So if we're really honest ourselves about our own businesses, there's usually a whole lot of messes in there. And if you've got staff, they'll say, sick of this, it's always the bit that's broken. How do we actually... Well, there's actually opportunity in that, So we have an email address that says innovation, and so our staff can put these creative ideas around their messes into there so we can actually try and solve them. But when you look for the mess, internally and externally, so when we talk about externally, that's with a customer. So what's absolutely broken with the way a customer operates? Now, could you create that into a solution, but one that has intellectual property around it, that one actually becomes worth something, or one that positions your business differently for the future? So when you start thinking that way around the mess, this is where we talk about some of the big corporate boards, and you say, well, where's the mess? And where's those problems that actually need to be solved? And you'll see when we get some of the moonshot thinking is where that really starts to come in, because when you really go for a walk through the countryside, away from business, and you start thinking this way, how does it start to affect the way you present a price thing to a customer? How does it actually start to you really, really get into this space? So the gems I took out of London was, mess equals opportunity. Problems equal opportunity. Really get it and ingrain it into your business so all your people start to think this way. Solutions, outcome. And that innovation happens internally and externally. Alright? And then I went to 2017, Silicon Valley, San Fran, EO had one up there, and it was a Singularity University. I don't know if you've ever heard of Singularity. They are very much into exponential thinking in that, and they're a global university. I've done a course with them since then, a lot of our exec team have as well, and it paints a picture of the future. Now, some of the future is actually quite scary. It's not all progress, and as we know, we know what the Bible says and what the future is, and but it opens your eyes, but also opens eyes to opportunity and around the whole exponential thinking. So this was quite huge for me, and it comes to the linear mindset. Again, we come to work, we think our businesses, we hear from the government, we're going to grow by 2% our economy this year, or at the moment they're saying we're probably going to go down by whatever, but it's that same linear thinking, and that's what naturally how we actually think. Fair?
Mm.
But if we solely ever think that way, does that mean we make the right decisions? Or we're going to just carry on, it's always going to be this way till we hit the wall. So in the age of the change in that we're in, and all businesses are changing, you know, every single day the technology is changing, is if we're solely linear mindset, the exponential thinking theory is around that if we solely ever think linear, we make flawed decisions. We make decisions hugely on yesterday, not on what's happening out there. So if we're thinking that way, are we really making decisions for the future of our business and what could be around the corner? So learning to think exponentially is vital to discovering new opportunities, including innovative solutions, and more accurately assessing the future. And my challenge is, you scratch the surface of any industry. If you spent just 2 hours a week doing some Googling around your sector and doing some research, you see what you find. You'll find, wow, there's some real smart tech out there. What does that mean for my business in the future? Or how do I actually now position my business due to that? And we're going to do a bit of an exercise at the end of this. You know, and an example is, it's about 3 years old now, but I bought a car 3 years ago, and a lot of cars have this in now. But, you know, the problems they were trying to solve is, I used to have to get my car serviced every 15,000 k's. This car is every 34,000 k's. Right? I get my time back, don't I? They're solving that problem, you know. The old car used to cost me $140 to $150 to fill up, and I'd go every 4 days. Now, I'm usually every 3 weeks, and it costs me $70. The problems that are getting solved through just even a motor vehicle. If I'm driving down the road and I drift out of the lane, the steering wheel pulls me back into the lane and corrects me. You know, all these things affect and disrupt business. You know, right through to repairers, through to service things and all that. We have to know in the different sectors what the future actually is, so we can be good stewards of our business and position our organisation for the future. Make sense? Mm. So we've all seen exponential line. It is not the COVID-19 curve. You know, it's not. You know, so we've got the linear line and we've got the exponential line. And there's some different things of that. We've all seen, Singularity talks about the 6 Ds of exponential growth. So we've all seen digitalisation. We've seen from scanning to photos and all these different things that's actually happened, right? And they call this piece actually in here the disappointment phase. And you go and create an innovative product at the moment, and it has to get traction, and so it's really disappointing until it actually gets above this line. So you think, gee, I've spent all this money, but I'm not actually getting any traction, you know. But you are, which we'll look at. The disruptive growth, when it starts to actually come up. So even when it's at curves in that bottom bit, it's often doubling, 0.01, 0.02. You start getting that to 30 rounds of doubling, it's a billion-fold growth. And that's that exponential curve coming. And again, that is the fear with COVID-19, I guess. Materialisation. This is a process by which technologies and services move from costing money to becoming available for free. So, you know, these things here, they say, today, have $1 million of 1980s technology in them. Mm-hmm. We don't need the movie camera anymore. We don't need a high-res camera. We don't need a navman. We don't need all these different things. We don't need a torch even. You know? You see, what Apple did, they didn't create a phone, they created a platform. And platforms disrupt. Alright? It wasn't a phone that disrupted, they created a platform. And a platform that allowed people to create apps for it and do different things, you know? And that's what disrupted. So how many tens of thousands of businesses went out of business due to those? But in the end, these things actually become free. You know, even you saw with these to start with, you initially had to buy the Torch app. In the end, the Torch app was built in as a free thing, because it was only software, you know. Yeah, so demonetisation. So again, you know, you look at the cameras, we used to have the megapixels, now it's included in the phone. And the other thing that's changing too is democratisation is as a result of digitising and demonetising, the products powered by this technology becomes available for everyone on the planet. You know, as soon as they've got internet and a phone, all these services become available, so they go to scale so quickly. So it's an interesting thing. So we talk about moonshots, and so we talk about this exponential curve, and we've got the linear. Well, right at the top of that exponential is that great big crazy moonshot idea. Get that? What is that great big? So what's God placed on your heart? What is that dream He's placed on your heart? Because remember, dreams are God's way of saying, go for it. How do we hang on to that? So I'm going to share a couple of moonshots with you. And these are crazy ideas, and some have worked, and some haven't quite worked well enough yet. But so I'll share this one. You may have seen this before, but it's going to work for me. Has been designed to provide the global security industry a faster, safer and more cost-effective way to assess security events, as well as improve security outcomes.
We have spent the last 2 years developing a fully automated, high-tech solution to the problem using drones that integrate with existing security systems. Our system allows an immediate response to security events at any time of the day. The Vigilair drone is controlled by our Intelligent Flight Risk Management System, which manages safe flight paths, site alarm zones, and controls the launch pad. Vigilair can save up to 50% in traditional guarding costs and substantially reduces the risk of confrontation or injury to guards while providing improved security outcomes. As a real-time aerial video surveillance platform, Vigilair also provides valuable support to security and police units for the chase and apprehension of suspects. The video streams and control networks are protected against cyber attack, and the Vigilair drone is built to operate in harsh weather conditions. Our pre-flight weather analysis ensures that it will only operate in safe conditions. Since the system is fully automated, it requires virtually no operator maintenance or handling. We designed the Nest to protect the drone from the environment and charge the drone while it's not in operation, using our unique charging system.
Our vision is to see Vigilair adopted as a fundamental part of the future security solution, providing surveillance, response, and peace of mind. So that's a moonshot. So I guess we have these crazy ideas and we think out there. So we spent $2 to $3 million on the development of that product. In the end, probably I had a bit of a disagreement with the board actually, because I said, well, from a shareholder perspective, I'd like to pause it for a while because of the demands on capital. But and so we did pause it, and then we've done a pivot on that. But we're about to come back to Vigilair. So we actually signed Panasonic globally to resell this product, and Gallagher's are also in negotiation. But Panasonic will be the one eventually probably who sells it globally for us. So we've got patents issued in the US now, which are through on this, but we did push pause on it because we're in the middle of another rewrite of the software, because that's all the old the first take software, so the software is very, very different now. But again, these are the problems we can try and solve. But we got to the point and say, well, we spent $2 or $3 million here, and we've got to get sales, or we've got to start to get traction, and or we've got to go through capital raise, or what we're going to do, because our challenge as a group is we've got lots of businesses growing, and we've got to invest capital actually in all these over here as well. And so what happened is David Walsh, the CEO of New Zealand Post, does anyone know David at all? He came to see me with one of his GMs, and he said, "Oh, Mike, we like to talk because we've done a lot of work in drones and all sorts of applications." And he said, "Look, we'd love to talk around our part, because they own Courier Post. We'd love to talk about parcel delivery and stuff like that, and what it looks like, what you see in the future." And I said, "Look, David, 10 years plus away. It's the public. Even though technology-wise we could do it, the public would never accept it. So they're not ready for it, and CAA wasn't ready for it either, civil aviation. And but what would be really interesting, David, is we would the backhaul between your depots is quite different though, because that's a common flight route all the time. These you're not suddenly trying to deliver to the team of 5 million. You're actually just got the logistics knows all your depots around the country, and we could fix that flight route." So that's really interesting, and we agreed we'd just follow up. And anyway, the next day, my office got glass walls, and I sort of sit in my office and I put my head up. And he was David Walsh back the next day with my EA. I'm like, "What is this David back for?" And anyway, he'd forgotten his diary, unbeknown to me, and so he came into my office for a yak. And I've got a whiteboard in my office, and we're just standing there like this, for 15 minutes yakking. We're just exploring this. And you get this God moment again, this little God download. And I sort of said, what's a strip of land, that goes up and down the country, which is low risk for drones, CAA would be all right around, that we could shift parcels and freight and stuff like that. The rail corridor. It's just this crazy idea. David got really excited. So I know Peter Reedy, the CEO of Rail. And anyway, so David said, "Look, I'll tee up a meeting with one of our other GMs and maybe explore it a bit more." So he did that. So I went to the meeting with one of his GMs, and his GM didn't get it. So I texted David. I said, "David, your GM didn't get it." He organised another meeting with that GM and another GM, and I then pitched to both of them. And then they both got it, and they introduced me to KiwiRail. And one of them tagged along. And I went to a meeting with KiwiRail, and there was legal counsel, and there was some of their C-suite in there. And I said, "I want to share a moonshot with you." Because when you start using the word moonshot, it actually becomes contagious. It's really funny now. We've got government ministers talking about moonshots. It's really funny. It came from us. And we and I said, to Rail, you got this airspace up to 400 feet above the tracks. What if what we call strata title the airspace? So it can be different owners of that airspace, or different tenants that actually lease that airspace, which are freight and courier companies. And we give you a complete technology solution end-to-end that ships freight, fully automated in that corridor. And what's more, when the drones fly through AI, we'll inspect the asset for buckle tracks, rubbish, graffiti, everything, and it'll let you work straight away. And they're all like this. And the response was, "We've always been about steel wheels and steel tracks and never looked above our heads." Oh. That's what they said. And so they were really excited. And they said to me, they said, but we're a government organisation. We'll have to go to RFP and we'll have to get through prices and things like that. I said, "Well, good luck with that." But I said, that's actually, because we deal with the government every day for other businesses, and that's not what the government tender rules actually say. What the government rules actually say, if someone comes with an innovative idea, you can go sole source with them. Yeah. And I told them that. And they said, "Well, we'll go and talk to legal counsel and procurement." And so 2 weeks later we had another meeting. They opened the meeting and they said, "We've spoken to legal counsel, we've spoken to procurement, you're absolutely correct. We can just go sole source of you guys." So that night at 8:30 they sent an email saying they were going to proceed. The next meeting, over 2 weeks they signed $6 million off just like that. Moonshot thinking. So crazy ideas can actually turn into something. So here's a snapshot. This started off called Project Can. And but again, I think these are opportunities these are downloads from God. you know, and some of them are out there. Do we carry on that linear, or where do we think at times? And so we did this animation, and to be able to explain, because you're suddenly trying to deal with the board of Kerry Rail and the board of Spark, and you'll hear about that, and Airways Corporation and different things like that, and government, and you're trying to explain what this silly moonshot is in 3 minutes, you know, and what's the problem you're actually trying to solve. So here's an animation, if you can see. You might want to stand up a bit back. So firstly, it was called Project CAN. Actually, I'll just stop it. KAN. And K standard for Kiwi Rail. A was for ASG Technologies, one of our businesses, and N was for New Zealand Post. But confidentially, the New Zealand Post couldn't find any money, so they're not in it. So it really got into, you know, what's the future of freight and what's the problems we're trying to solve, because often we're trying to get a parcel out of Auckland to another part and you miss the courier, you know, or hey, you're trying to get out of a city, oh, and look, you know. And what's more is we've got diesel pumping vehicles doing some urgent parcels, and how could we look to do that quite differently? So what's the problem? So the technology involves a canister. This canister can take multiple parcels, and it automatically centres the gravity of those parcels for air freight, and it's electronically sealed and electronically tracked. So when the parcel things get to the other end, they know no one's opened it, no one's actually, it's tracked the whole way, etc. So this is a logistics node. I mean, these are effectively built as part of freight companies, as part of their facilities where they've got rail sidings coming into them, which a number of them have. And the technologies, so what we've done, we've pivoted from Vigil Air into this. So we spent $3 million developing Vigil Air, but the profit we make out of this will pay for all our development on Vigil Air. Get it? So it makes you feel a bit better. So these are what we call VTOL craft, so they vertically take off. The craft we're using at the moment fly 8 hours from Auckland to Wellington, in the rail corridor.
So it's already happening?
Yep, well, it's a prototype at the moment. It's completed at the end of October. So these new big craft, these craft are 3.5 metres wide. And I think the first flight of the new craft are today, actually. So, but there's other smaller craft they're using at the moment. All that ground robots all being created. We've created all that technology. There's a logistics node out in South Auckland at the moment. And this robot picks that whole drone up as well, actually.
Can you imagine the conspiracy that the public will go, bam?
Yeah. So the government's very well briefed on this project. So. But it's meant to have been in the media, but Grant Robertson and Vincent Peters won't allow it to be in the media at the moment because they think it's going to impact jobs. So that's why it's not in the media.
So what height are they flying at?
Up to 400 feet.
Not going to knock the blocks off.
No, they're pretty quiet too, actually. So this is the strata tiling the airspace. It's actually 20 feet bands. And it's fully automated. So there's no humans flying, and it's all fully systemised.
Wow.
So the trains can also move?
Yeah, the trains are all happening underneath. Yeah. But also what happens is drones fly and they inspect the asset. So this here is showing graffiti or a sign down, and this alerts through to their workers straight away. So we've got artificial intelligence, AI, right at the edge on the UAVs, drones, and it alerts straight to their workers so they can respond. So graffiti, it can spot it straight away. It only spots what it's been trained to spot, so it can't like go and say, hey, what are you doing that for, or something like that. And it can only see in the rail corridor. So some of the stuff we're doing is every time a train hits a cow, it's $50,000. That's what it costs Kiwi Rail. It's probably due to the train outage and all the time, and that's the cost. So some of the AI stuff we've just done, actually, we can identify cows and we alert them that the cows are loose. Tree incursion into the corridor, we identify all that through AI at the moment. So pretty much we can train AI to do anything like that, buckle tracks, subsidence and things like that. So you start, looking at it. So this is coming into land. You look at something like the Kaikoura earthquake happened. It destroyed the railway tracks, right? It destroyed the state highway. If the Navy dropped one of our logistics nodes down there, we have another one back on State Highway 1, we can move freight 24 hours a day. Some of the bigger drones we can take 600 kgs. Wow. But we can fly 24 hours a day, but every time too, after every aftershock, they're getting live updates on the damage to the tracks and infrastructure. That's a problem solver. It's a crazy moonshot, isn't it? But
600 kg, you take a family.
yeah, well, there's no reason why not. I would it.
What other moonshot?
I've seen them crash too. We've lost a few in the ocean, so.
If you go through tunnels that are more than 400 feet above.
There's a different, so we can be down, but there is another patent we've filed around tunnel management at the moment, and there's still some work. That'll be a further stage of the project, but it's actually quite surprising how few tunnels there actually are in New Zealand from the data we've got from KiwiRail.
So like going out in Kaimais, do you go through the tunnel?
No, we can actually go up and over as well.
So just below that, at that 400 feet there. So those spaces, there's 3 or 4 spaces there you've got, are they all sold?
No, so what's probably going to happen is that at the end of this development phase there's going to be an RFP go out for an operator to run this platform, and then some people will subscribe to that platform, have a lease for that stripped space, things like that. And there's one freight company in New Zealand who's trying to be the operator at the moment, who's trying to position themselves to be there.
So Mike, the original pitch seemed to be for urgent parcel delivery between the depots.
Oh, it could be
Is that
anything.
still there?
It's all the same. Yeah. One of the ones we're looking at the moment is to Waiheke as well. Waiheke's quite an easy one for us to achieve, which goes outside of the rail corridor, but CAA is happy. So the way we do a project like this too is we go through. We've learned. If you walked into someone like Kira and said, "Oh, we want $6 million," they'll say, "Who are you?" Right? So we say, there's a saying we use a lot in our business today. If you try and eat an apple whole, it'll kill you. Right? It will. But if you take one bite, you taste the sweetness and you want to take another bite. So we call in a project like this, we have a discovery phase. Right? And it's a nice, so the discovery phase for this would cost KiwiRail 100 grand. Oh, I'm prepared to take a risk of 100 grand, KiwiRail said. We filed 2 patents within that 100 grand. Right? We got civil aviation sign off for the project beyond line of sight. We did the high level design stuff, and we did the further costings, and we worked with their commercial people around cost per parcel to see it wasn't actually a viable thing. All in that 100 or 120 grand, right? And we call that the discovery phase, phase 1. Now we're in phase 2, which is multi-millions, developing the prototype. You see, well, what's the first bite? So often if we're going to talk to customers, even our other businesses, hey, we can come and talk, we can actually do something really smart around that. Let's do it as a discovery phase, see if it's going to work for you, let's see if it's going to work around the technology, and give it a go. Because you're selling it for what it is. It's a discovery phase, see if it's actually going to work. You're not coming black and white to say it's going to be perfect for them. This is innovation. You don't even know every problem to solve yet, because you haven't got into it, So then you get little things that come along, because then KiwiRail ran out of money. But we have a partnership with Spark, and we have a legal agreement with them where we'll do things together strategically and different things. And so I went and spoke to Spark and said, "Well, do you want to be a shareholder?" And they were excited day one. I said, "Oh, yeah, okay, we'll be in." And then we weren't going to be a shareholder in the end thing because we're the creator of the solution, but we ended up with a 12% stake in the company. So it's 51% owned by KiwiRail, Spark 36, and we must be 13 or something. Well, Spark's 37, one number out, I think. Yeah. So, and Airways Corporation's also a stakeholder. They were meant to have an equity stake, but they're a stakeholder in it as well. So the two government SOEs. So it's kind of surreal because I was sitting in Russell McVeigh's office in Auckland with Sparks Lawyers, Kiwirau, and Airways Corporation. I'm thinking, here's little old me, an electrician going into business with two state-owned enterprises and a listed telco, you know what I mean? But so God takes us on some interesting journeys, you know. But the crazy idea on the whiteboard is what turned into that.
So were you the one that had the original spark of idea with?
Yes.
Okay, and then you took it to who at that point? Like, just thinking of the development of the idea to
Oh, it was only a crazy idea.
right.
Because you don't spend too much on the crazy idea because you don't know all the pieces of the crazy idea, but conceptually it's possible, and we were pivoting off Vigil Air anyway, so we knew a lot of the technology piece we could do, and then it's really, I mean, New Zealand Post helped us to get into the right level of Kiwirau, you know, so. There's a real funny story about, I mean, for time, but I'm on AUT University's business school board, and AUT has these little private dinners, and there's about 8 attendees of them, and I've been to about 3 or 4 of them. The last one was just before lockdown with Winston Peters, and so it's on the edge of the campus. There's a little private restaurant in Auckland, and we're the only ones in the restaurant. And anyway, I told Kiwirau that Winston was coming for this dinner, and anyway, and they were very eager to brief him. So anyway, we're at this restaurant, we're sitting down, there's the CEO of Freightways and the CEO of McDonald's New Zealand and the Vice Chancellor and a couple of others, and the Vice Chancellor says, you know, to these other guys, tell Winston around your business and that. And then Derek says to me, Mike, tell them about your businesses, and I talked about Advance and that, and I said, Minister, you may have heard around Project Can and the rail corridor. And this is Winston goes, stop here, I'm going to tell the story, he says, you know, he told. And he said, I had an hour briefing today at the Beehive around this project, that I was having dinner with this person associated tonight. And I said, no, I'm not, I'm having dinner at AUT. And anyway, he went for 15 minutes to explain all around this project, you know, so he was pretty passionate about it, you know, so pretty hard case, so, you know. But as a start to idea of what a moonshot can start to look like for a business, we're starting to look at what's the problem we're actually trying to solve. And even look at our normal business. What are those everyday issues or pain points, or the pain point of the customer, that you could create something that, for one, gives your business intellectual property, because intellectual property becomes worth something significant in your business too. And as well, it becomes a unique product offering you've got in the market, you know. And it can create something like this. So Spark verbalised at one stage, they believe their investment in here could be worth 100 million in the future. Right? I had to explain to New Zealand Post and Kiwirau what IP was. I'm not joking. I had to explain to them, and even to David Walsh, I said, how can you afford not to be in this? You make $100 million out of it, you know, or something like that. Because Kiwirau says they have a relationship with every rail operator in the world. And so they could straight away sell this to every rail operator in the world, as they believe. We'll see. But anyway, that's not what we're about. We're actually about trying to create these technologies and solve these problems. And even with AI right now, we're doing a huge amount of different things. With, you know, the green walls that go up the sides of buildings you see on big apartment buildings at the moment, they've got live plants growing in big shopping centres. We're using IoT devices and we can predict when those plants are going to fail and die, and through AI we can see which plant it is and we can alert so those plants don't die. You know, so it's some real amazing stuff we're doing in that space. What's another thing? We did a flying cell site for Spark. So in the event of like a Christchurch earthquake where they lost all the cell sites in the end because there was no power and things like that, we have a generator and what's called a tether. The drone can go up and the drone will stay there for 2 weeks in the sky, and we can keep 3,500 mobile phone users off that drone.
Wow.
So that's one project we did with them 2 years ago. So, but that's all paid innovation stuff for us, and thinking differently and thinking outside the box with them. We pitched that to Vodafone for 18 months and they couldn't get it. Spark, straight away. You know, so just, you know, so. But
Mike, you mentioned This is a really smart idea, I think we all agree with that, but you mentioned that you didn't intend having a shareholder, but you ended up with 12%. That doesn't make sense to me.
In what way?
Well, in terms of your idea, you've developed it.
Oh, look, look, it's a very good point. Look, our journey's been look, we've learnt from this even. Our one going forward is we won't pay for a stake, we just automatically get a stake because it's our moonshot,
So you should, yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But in this here, we've learned, this is some of the things you learn, you know, what would you do differently actually next time? And we've already talked about internally, well, automatically we're getting a 15% stake on any moonshots, as you know, because it's our idea, you know. So it's interesting because we had written even into the shareholder agreement and into the heads of agreement that it was actually our moonshot. It's not the CEO of Kiwi Runs, it's not Winston Peters, it's actually ours. So when it comes to the TV side, it's actually our idea. Because we know what it turns into in a lot of these organisations too. But there's learning in this too. Yeah, there's learning in what we did individually. There's learning in this. But I think, how do we position our businesses for the future? How do we do things differently? What's those things we can do? You know, Watercare's a big client of ours, and been in the media a lot lately. But you know, I went to pitch to a board of one of the big service providers that maintains their network, and I said, how do you secure that contract the next time around? And what's the platform you're going to create? And what's the because with IoT devices today, which are little cheap devices the size of my thumb, we get data off them into the cloud through AI. We analyse them, and we can predict a valve failure and different things like that. So instead of Watercare replacing that valve, they don't actually have to replace that for now 5 years, and so they make informed decisions around their asset management. We've been doing a bit of work with Transpower around the joints and the conductors, where they have to test them every 6 months or so. And they currently lower a guy down on a helicopter live liner to do it. And through that radio, he says the readings up to the pilot, and the pilot writes it down in the notebook. That's actually what happens at the moment. And they said they were quite keen to look at drones, so we came up with a drone solution. The drone comes out, a little robotic thing lowers down, it goes onto the conductor, and automatically it sends it straight up to the Azure cloud. And Transpower sitting in Wellington, if I log in, the data's just coming. And it analyses year on year and says this joint's going to fail. So very, very different stuff. So we have about 30 innovation projects on like this at the moment in our incubator, the ASG Technologies business. All of different sizes. There's one to do with dock and traps at the moment, and that's using AI as well, and satellite technology. But again, exponential thinking. How do we start to think differently? And what's that start to look like for your business? So you've all got a little bit of paper, I think, in front of you. Is there a bit of an area you can just write some notes in there on the back of one of them? Because this isn't in there. But this is one exercise we do with boards, even big corporates. And you say, right, it's the year 2020, yes, it's arrived. But what does your business look like in the year 2040? You might say it's not going to be my problem, but but what does it actually look like in the year 2040? So let's just think about that for a minute. And you might say I haven't scratched the surface yet to see actually what's going to happen, but it's getting to start getting this thinking. Now you're thinking like that. I'm going to put a curveball into that. What does your customer look like in the year 2040? Because you can't actually answer the first question until you've answered the second question. Does that make sense? So if you're an auto mechanic or something like that, what does the customer look like in the year 2040? What are they going to be driving compared to what they're driving today? And it's an interesting exercise to go through this with your teams, actually, and actually explain. It might sound crazy, but you actually start to think about it. Because the next question comes, so again, we're going back to the first question. So what does it look like then? And then, what if we said this was only 3 years away? Because that's what disruption is. So unless we're looking at the future, unless we're looking out there, you know, and what we say to big corporates and even government agencies at the moment is go and get a uni student, third-year uni student, and pay them for a day a week just to research emerging trends globally and put it in your board papers. Because they're like this and they don't understand it. I spoke to one board and they and there was directors from Genesis Energy and all these big directors on there. And I shared what we'd done about an incubator. Because what we did, we created an incubator that creates all this tech smart stuff today. And I said to someone earlier, I said it to Bill Gallagher, you know, and we keep them away from our other businesses and we tell them to dream. We've got to put some restraints on it today because it costs us a lot of money, but you know, we encourage them to dream. And these days we dream with customers and we spend the customers' money and government's money and different things like that. Because we bring them too much in our organisation, they get told you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. And the dream is lost. You know? And that's been our thing. And it happens in our organisation too, you know. Oh, you can't do that. You know? I went for Christmas do and the guy said, oh, what's that crazy thing you guys are doing? And oh, that won't happen, will it? You know, there's always going to be someone who's going to discourage and take you down on it. But, you know, this is really true stuff. And honestly, in your sector, you know, even in legal professions, accountancy professions, all these things, the impact of AI is massive. A lot of these different emerging technologies and systems and platforms that are being created are huge. And but you know, in the industry you're in, what those real problems that have to be solved are. You know the mess. You know the mess of your customer. And if you can solve that problem, you've just positioned your business for the future. And like Spark says, well, that's a $100 million opportunity. But what's more, it doesn't have to be about the money. It's what's the problem we're actually solving. It might be world hunger. One of the ones I was looking at, so we've got two pivots off the back of Flock. We're going to use the same platform for shark patrol in Australia. Because our understanding is the greenies want the nets gone, right? So we can have a drone out at sea, 8-hour operations. We can identify the shark in the water through AI and we can alert the beach. Same technology we've got here. We're just pivoted for a different purpose. So the whole thing of pivots is that we can go innovate faster every time, right? And so we get more of an opportunity actually every time as well to solve complex real problems. The other one is rescue. So obviously with the likes of, if you're out off the Coromandel boating and something happens, it's you know, in the end, you know, Westpac's going to be out there on one of those rescue choppers. But through the same platform here, we can do full search and rescue. Our drones can be up to 8 hours. We have drones that can fly 40 hours in a perfect grid location over that water, identify you in the water, know you're alive due to the thermal camera as well, alert your GPS location straight back to Westpac Rescue and they're there. But we're not limited to an hour of fuel. We're not limited to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding, it's only the rescue and police choppers that can fly at night anyway, I think, in New Zealand. But we can fly 24 hours a day. So what's the pivots that actually solve real problems? I said to Spark, you know, we get people lost in the bush and there's no cell phone coverage. By flying over there with that cell site underneath, now their phone goes beep, beep, beep for all the missed calls they've got. Now we can actually find them. We can save lives.
Wow.
But what's the problems we can solve when we start to think differently? You know, those opportunities that whisper and those crazy downloads you get, you know. I must say though, I mean, in the GFC, Global Financial Crisis, they had that entrepreneurial summit and I got invited to that. And I went for all these walks trying to come up with some innovative ideas. I couldn't come up with one. So it's probably quite a disappointing day for some people in the group I was in. But you know, you just get them at times, you know, and it's like the phone numbers. There are opportunities that whisper, and are we obedient to that at those times? You know what I mean? That's what I think, you know. Questions on that, or a load of rubbish, or what do you think?
Well, just a question about the intellectual property that you've mentioned that, and so with your initial intention not even to have a shareholding. It sounds like the patents though are owned by your company. So even if you didn't have a shareholding.
No, there's two different pieces there. So technology that they're using of ours is, so we've signed a licensing agreement between Vigil Air Limited and Flock Limited.
Right.
5% of their revenue comes to us forever.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yep.
So that's actually quite a good deal we've actually got. But so we've got patents of our own, but Flock has patents of their own that we've done for them, which is new technology that they've paid for. So there's sort of, Dari, the IP licensing stuff when you're dealing with two state-owned enterprises, and Spark has been horrendous of lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers, but we think we've got a good position. So there's IP on different sides,
Right.
but they've got to pay a license fee. We can also license some of the technology we've created that they've paid for back to us for pivots.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because it sounds like you're using that same thing that's been
Yeah,
developed.
so we have to pay a licensee fee back for some of that stuff, so there's different pieces. So
Right.
yeah, Angie probably knows all about this stuff, you know. So, but it's been quite a minefield of lawyers and Russell McVeigh and all these sort of people to get. And there's a lot of learning on that too. Like you say, there's this so like Guy, you know, said we would just take automatically a free stake as part of the deal going forward. And that's some stuff we're looking at the moment, some of the other projects we've got on, you know. But why we ended up with a stake in that and we paid for that stake was it means we were putting our money where our mouth was too, you know. And it's a pretty high profile project with the government, so yeah. Questions around that stuff?
Just going sideways a little bit, you know, when you talk to these people, you get to talk to people on a one-to-one level, and you get to, do you get to share them about, you know, how God has inspired these things for you? You share? I mean, obviously not.
Yeah, look, it's always a challenging one, as you know. I mean, I like to think that people, it's very easy to scratch the surface and see who I am on the internet, and that I have a faith. There's Herald articles about me, and I'm on Shine Reema's board now, and so it's quite evident. And I like to see people true to the values we live and what we do as the other. So it's a hard one to say where it's sort of, you know, that makes sense, you know. But look, it's exciting stuff, and it's totally God. It's God's fingerprints. I mean and the other thing, I mean, one of the great things about governance, I mean, my chairman is a real experienced global CEO. He's the global managing director of Barclays Bank, and it's been a real blessing. So they're unsaved, our board, but they totally know that our faith is, and they live by our values and things like that. And you know, but one of the things he taught to me, because I'm a Sparky, I never thought I was worthy to talk to the CEO of the Warehouse Group, or the CEO of New Zealand Post, or the CEO of Kiwi Rail. I'm just a Sparky. And you know, he said to me, Mike, CEOs deal with CEOs. Get over yourself. You know? And it's true, if God's called us to that, we do have to get over ourselves, don't we? Because these things that are on us, we'll talk about later, they're not the truth. We put these limitations on ourselves, and they're not the truth.
Absolutely.
You know, and when God's involved, and going right back to that first slide I have, you know, you go right back here. Takes a while. That there. If I'd said, oh no, I'm not going to talk to the CEO of the Warehouse Group, I'm not going to, you know, to Winston Peters or different things like that, is I could just carry on the path I'm taking. But God's also given me opportunity. And if I get asked to speak, even somewhere around this stuff, so I got invited to go to the Beehive around the future of transportation innovation. I say, yes, I'm going. Because God must be in that, right?
Yes.
Sure, I might be really uncomfortable because I'm actually, even today doing this, I'm actually really introverted. So it's actually a lot for me to do. But there's an obedience piece too, because God's called me to business. You know? And because, and how does it start to change?
You must have gone through the period where, in your discovery phases,
you know, and before you sort of got past your, you know, you had that negative
Disappointment face.
Yeah, so that cost money. So how did you go about, you know, getting financial backing to get that dream into reality?
Well, look, all of our businesses we bootstrapped from day one, so you're not familiar with the term, so you find every which way you can with your own resources to do it, or the banks. Our benefit from day one is we've always built profitable businesses. So again, we've got 9 businesses in the group, and really 7 of those are profitable. And you know, but our challenge has been is we've sucked the Vigil Air and that real big amounts of capital out of those to actually fund the future piece. And probably my lesson in the end is that it was starting to impact the other businesses too. So, you know, and I stand by my decision was the right decision to put that stuff on hold. That's why when it came to doing the Flock one, it was different. Let's go early and actually get. I sound like Jacinda then, don't I? But let's go early and actually get a customer on board, and that's where we changed our thinking. How do we actually take a moonshot to a customer and use their money? And it's profitable work for us. And if we can get the free steak, which is what we've learned out of the Flock one, then gee, you know, and we can do lots of innovation then, not just 1 or 2 projects. Because one of my learnings out of Silicon Valley was Singularity University. They've got an incubator like ours. So we've got, you know, again, probably 30 projects on. They have 200 projects on. And because what they believe, if they're doing 200 projects, they're really innovating. When you only have a certain amount of money, you're doing 2 or 3, you end up being really cautious with it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you're not really, really innovating. Makes sense?
Why haven't the airlines got a slice of the pie?
What was that, sorry?
Why haven't the airlines got a slice of this pie?
They're not aware, in saying that, and confidentially in here, I mean, Freightways is one of the stakeholders who wants a stake, and they fly more flights apparently in New Zealand at night time on freight, apparently, up and down the country, like their own fleet of planes. So they're wanting to be the operator of this platform, Freightways. But we're sort of in negotiations, well, Flock's in negotiations with them at the moment. So. But the challenge is it sounds wonderful, all this, but you can imagine the politics around the board table of the 2 state-owned enterprises and Spark, and then us, the privately owned, what we like to think agile business. You know, yeah, so Mike ends up being quite blunt with the likes of Kibera sometimes, but they seem to cope, you know, and yeah, you know, so. Yeah, it's fascinating, but I think this is it, you know, how do we think differently? How do we think out there? How do we actually position our businesses for the future? And it doesn't have to be something crazy like this, but what does it actually look like? How do we scratch the surface? How do we know where technology is going? What's going to impact it? And how do we embrace some of that? What's the mess? How can we create IP around that? It's really been our journey. And I think it's the constant learning, you know, how do we keep on learning all the time? You know, it's no different to our faith walk, is it? You know, we're constantly learning and developing in our walk with Christ and things like that, and He's rounding off the edges and doing the work in us. And how do we invest in our own future and our development and our learning? We're going to talk a bit about that after coming up. All right, any other questions? Otherwise we'll stop for 5 and then we'll start the next thing, which is a bit different.
Just a question around technology and the whole AI thing. Is there, when you look at innovation, and looking at ideas, is there anything that, obviously areas that you won't go?
Oh, there's won't do? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what we're trying to do at the moment is establish a centre of excellence for AI in New Zealand, which is a global lead on AI, because there's a massive amount of ethics around AI, and AI for good and not for bad. And we also want to guide the government through our relationship with the government around that as well, and on the global stage. Because there's a huge lot of bad stuff in Pandora's box we don't want let out as well. And there's a lot of tech entrepreneurs globally are actually keeping stuff inside the box at the moment. But we're trying to drive that here, so we're pushing Microsoft pretty big around AI at the moment, and how we create this team in New Zealand. So New Zealand's a global leader, we have global influence. And that's what I believe. If we're called to business, I mean, we've changed, there's no area where we've changed our thinking, you know. We invite ministers of parliament to our office. Come and learn about what we do. We've had Simon Bridges, we've had Twyford, we've had all these different people come to our office. We host them for an hour, we tell them about what we do. You don't wait to get invited there and share your stuff. How do we influence? If we're called to the sectors we're in, how do we say, actually, why don't you come and visit us? I remember years ago, when John Key was in, I wrote this big letter around the trades in New Zealand because I was dissatisfied. It's about 6 pages, like a mic rambling at 11 o'clock at night. And they sent a minister up from Wellington to come down and sit with me for 2 hours to go through. You know, how do we have our say? How do we influence? It's even if the government we've got now, no matter who you vote for, I mean, I send things to the PM's office, we send things to Grant Robertson, even if we don't vote for them. You know, how do we actually have influence today? How do we actually, you know? Yeah.
And you've been positioned in such a way that they will come and visit you. So, you know, that's interesting how God works.
But we're in a country, and we probably don't realise it, the government is so accessible.
Yes.
If you send an email to Simon.Bridges at Parliament, whatever, it goes straight to him on his phone. Right?
Does he read it?
Yes, they do. You know, so sometimes they go into the black hole because I'm busy ministers and that. I mean, I caught up with Simon at an event, and he's been to office, and I caught up with the AUT dinner and that. And one night I flipped in and things, said, about calling into our office, and 40 minutes he came back to me, yeah, Mike, how about next Wednesday? Well, I'm sorry, I'm booked out then, Simon, we have to wait 3 weeks, but we're accessible. If we're called to business, you have an authority. Again, it's what comes out of our mouth. There's authority in that. You know, we've got to speak out that vision, really encourage it. You know, we for years with the advanced business, we're going to be in Wellington. Tell our supply chain, we're going to be in Wellington, we're going to be in Palmerston, we're going to be coming here. And we did that.
Yeah.
And we hear that ourselves. You know, and that's my encouragement. So, cool, have a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene, and Clarkie can tell me off in the break everything I've said that's wrong.